All right, let's dive right in. Today, we are tackling one of the biggest, oldest, most mind-bending questions in all of philosophy. We're going to come at it through a series of clever tricks, a few logical traps, and then land on a surprisingly elegant little proof.
I mean, this is it, right? The big one. Why does anything exist at all? For centuries, this question has launched 1,000 philosophical ships. But what if the answer wasn't some grand cosmic revelation? What if it was hiding in a simple language game?
So, let's start with a kind of playful, almost mischievous move. For the sake of this argument, just imagine an atheist decides to define the word God to literally mean nothing. Now, they're not making a big theological claim here, they're just swapping some labels around for a minute. Okay, now watch how this unfolds. The premise for an atheist is pretty straightforward. God does not exist. But since we just defined God as nothing, that statement suddenly becomes nothing does not exist. And hey, if nothing doesn't exist, well, then something has to exist. Boom, case closed, right? Yeah, not so fast. As you've probably guessed, a puzzle that has stumped the greatest minds for millennia probably isn't going to be solved by a simple word swap. Here's why it falls apart. It's a clever rhetorical trick, but it's not a real proof. We haven't actually said a single thing about reality itself, what philosophers call ontology. All we've done is play a shell game with definitions. The deep, fundamental question about why reality is here at all, totally untouched. Okay. So that first attempt was a fun little dead end. Let's go one level deeper down the rabbit hole with another clever, kind of tongue-in-cheek attempt. This one is all about self-reference. Check this out. The argument here is that the very act of creating the proof, let's just call it P, actually brings something into existence. That something is the proof itself. It feels like a clever, inescapable trap, doesn't it? And, well, it is. This is a textbook example of a logical fallacy called begging the question. It's basically a fancy term for circular reasoning. It's when you sneak the conclusion you're trying to prove right into your starting assumptions. And here's the sleight of hand. The argument only seems to work because we're already in a world where things like thoughts and language and the text of the proof you're reading right now already exist. You've assumed the very thing you were supposed to be proving. All right, enough with the word games and logical jokes. If we're going to get serious about this, we can't just play with words. We need to find a very, very specific kind of something. And this right here is the absolute heart of the problem. To really, truly prove that something must exist, we've got to find an entity whose existence isn't conditional. It can't depend on anything else. It has to be totally and completely self-sufficient. And this brings us to a super important philosophical distinction. On one side, you have contingent things. Think of an atom. For an atom to exist, it needs matter. It needs energy. It needs the laws of physics to hold up. On the other side, you have non-contingent things. Think about an abstract idea like a self-relating relation. It doesn't need matter. It doesn't need physics. Its existence only depends on its own internal logical coherence. And this category of non-contingent things is actually a lot bigger than you might think. We're talking about mathematical objects like the number 1 or pi, formal structures like sets, even fundamental logical truths like the idea that A can't be not A. These are all ideas that exist independently of our physical universe. So now that we're armed with this crucial difference between contingent and non-contingent things, we can finally build a real proof. But it's going to be a very specific, very narrow, and honestly a very elegant proof about the existence of just an idea. So we're not about to try and prove the existence of the entire cosmos. That's a bit ambitious. Instead, we're going to focus on proving that at least one of these abstract, non-contingent things absolutely must exist. So here's our starting point, our premise. The concept of a self-relation, which is just an abstract relationship that only relates to itself, is logically sound. There's no contradiction hiding inside that idea. It's a perfectly coherent thought. Now, the argument follows from that. Any idea that is logically coherent, that doesn't contradict itself, can be said to exist as an abstract object. It exists in the realm of concepts. And that leads us directly to our conclusion. Because the idea of a self-relation is totally coherent, it therefore must exist as an abstract object. And just like that, we've actually proven that something, in this case an abstract concept, exists.
See, what makes this proof work, where the others failed, is that unlike an atom, this self-relation doesn't depend on any prior conditions. Its existence is literally guaranteed by its own self-contained logical consistency. It is truly, genuinely independent.
And with that, we've crossed the finish line. We have successfully and logically proven the necessary existence of at least one thing. Now let's be super clear about what we've just accomplished. This is not a proof for why stars and galaxies are floating around out there. It's a much narrower proof that absolute total nothingness is impossible, because a logically coherent concept can always exist, even if it's only as an idea. So we've managed to show that at least one abstract entity has to exist, just out of pure logical necessity. But that leaves us with an even bigger, maybe even more profound question to chew on. What's the connection, if any, between the necessary existence of a concept and the very contingent existence of you and me? Why are we here?